first Bargue drawing or to set up any of your Bargue drawings, these are the things you're going to need. You're going to need paper. You're going to need a level 1 Bargue drawing. So this is a level 1 Bargue drawing. The level 1 Bargue drawings have been simplified to a certain degree. They're high contrast, and these are great for what we're going to be doing with these. We're going to need the paper, the level 1 Bargue drawing, either a T-square or a ruler, some thread, a sharpened pencil. So you can reference the sharpening a pencil video that we have on our YouTube channel, and some masking tape. So those are the things you're going to need to set up your first, the first marks are the things we do for our first few assignments. We're gonna do a repetition of about 3 or 4 of these. So you can rehearse this whole process a few times. So to get started, we are going to start with our paper. Now we are setting things up in a certain way so that we take all the variables out of the process. So here we have our drawing board and we have multiple sheets of paper. So we have usually 1 piece of paper underneath this. I happen to have 2 just because this is a rough drawing board. So our drawing boards often might have some anomalies on them. And if we just use 1 piece of paper, that if we're drawing on it, we're likely going to be getting some of those texture variations on our drawing, which we don't want. So we're actually using these papers underneath as kind of a cushion for our drawing paper. Now, our first marks paper is just our junky regular drawing paper. We don't want newsprint, but we don't need super fancy expensive paper. So this is just drawing paper. Our first marks processes are, again, we're going to be doing 3 or 4 of them. They're just the first few marks we put on the piece of paper for each of our drawings are going to be done on our junky paper. When we go to our level 2 Bargue drawing, we'll be using Canson Pearl Gray Me-Tints paper. But for now, we're just going to use regular paper and tape this down. So we put the cushion paper down and then the paper on top of it. I'm just going to clip these sides down. But you can see here I have tape on all the corners and all the sides. So we want to make sure that there aren't bubbles on this. There's nothing more annoying than drawing on a surface that's all kind of wavy. So the next thing I want to do is get my Bargue on my paper, right? So we don't want to put it here, obviously, because we have no place to draw. So if you're right-handed, keep the right side open. If you're left-handed, it's going to be easier to keep the left side open. So I'm right-handed, so I'm going to be drawing over here. So I keep it on the left-hand side. Now this is also a great setup for if you're doing any type of site size drawing from the flat. So let's say you're trying to copy a picture that you're doing or a portrait or something. So that this is a good setup for that. So how do we get, we don't want to get this on all crooked. Like that doesn't help us. So we want to try to get this on square to the board. So I'm going to be using a T-square, but what you could also do is just take an equal measurement from the side and make sure that, you know, it's 4 inches from the side here and then 4 inches from the side here and then tape it down. So then you're going to know it's kind of square to the board. I'm just going to use a T-square because that's easier. So I'm going to actually use a T-square to make sure that it's square, that the actual drawing is square on my paper here. So once I do that, I am going to take my tape that I have prepared and tape the corners. Okay, so that's nice and square on my corners here. So the Bargue is now on here square. So now the next thing we need to do, this is all nice and clean and everything. Now, the other thing that we need to do is make sure that we have our plumb on here. Now, what is a plumb? A plumb line is what we also use the terminology non-negotiable. So we're going to have 2 locations on our drawing that are never going to move. And our non-negotiables are really important. So how do we choose our non-negotiables. So we have options. So I recommend trying to find a non-negotiable would be a straight up and down, completely vertical line through the whole thing. So that is going to be helpful in terms of an anchor point. So one possibility would be having the plum go through where the chin meets the neck. What's nice about this is I can see negative spaces over here. There's a lot of information really close to the plum. And the plum or non-negotiable is just so beneficial because if there's information right up next door to it, it's very easy to find. Now keep in mind, this line will never move once I put it on my drawing, so it becomes this really solid anchor point. Another option we could choose is maybe the forehead. So that gives us, again, negative spaces in between the nose, but there's a lot of stuff far away from it. So I probably wouldn't choose that. I would probably choose something like the connection point here. Again, you could also do it over here. There's no right or wrong answer, but this has gives you a lot of great information here, but the profile's kind of left out in the middle of nowhere. I prefer to choose places that are really easy to, it could be arbitrarily in the middle of nowhere. And if that's going to be helpful for you, you get to decide and choose what makes the most sense for you. So our vertical non-negotiable is really the first thing that we choose, and usually the only thing we actually physically mark on this place. So we want to choose that, mark it, and then how do we put that down there? The same way we made sure this was square. We can either use a T-square or we can take measurements and make sure they're the same. So this takes a little bit of finessing. We want to make sure that this is taped down extremely well because we don't ever want it to move. Now we have a bunch of T-squares at the school for you to use and to, so that you don't have to bring a T-square with you every time. It is convenient to have one at home. Okay, so now we have our first non-negotiable down here. And then throughout this process, before you start, I think it would be a good idea for you to choose a horizontal non-negotiable. So again, we want to choose something that we're not going to tape down a plumb line here because this is not how it works when we start working from life. But this we can at least mentally take note of, you know, this here, it's close to where the lips join and the bottom of the ear shadow. Or the peak of the nose runs through a lot of information over here. So we want to mentally take note of where we want our second non-negotiable to be. That we will draw over here. So we have our bark drawing tape down. We've got our cushion paper down. We've got our regular paper down. If you were using your Canson paper, this is where you'd be taping your Canson paper on top of here. Okay, so now the only thing left that we have to do before we can start doing our bark drawing is we have to get this non-negotiable over here. Now, there's two ways we can do this. One, I could use my T-square again, but that also requires me to have faith in the fact that my drawing board is square and that my T-square is perfect. And I have trust issues, so I don't trust my materials all the time. So here's actually where I prefer to use a ruler. Now, where am I gonna place that plumb line over here? I don't wanna put it here because I'd have no room for the nose and all that stuff. And I don't wanna put way over here because again, I won't have space and it's really far away. I wanna make sure that this is as close to my drawing as possible. So I don't want it super far away. So I'm gonna approximately throw it right about there. I think that's a good place. So what I do to draw that is you know, I want to put it about, you know, let's say here. So I'm going to find a measurement that is approximate. So I'm putting the ruler right up to that string, and I'm thinking, all right, 9.5 is a nice even number for me to see. And then I'm going to come down here, put the ruler right up to the string, 9.5. So if I did my measuring correctly, if I connect my 9.5s all the way, if I choose a point in the middle, it should measure 9.5 if I did my measuring correctly. Now, you can make this line pretty dark. We don't want to lose it. This is our favorite line on our entire drawing because it's the one that does not move. Again, it's called the plum or the non-negotiable. So I'm going to take my sharpened pencil and I'm going to get that plumb line on there. Okay, so if I've done my job correctly, I can measure right up to the string and that should read 9.5, and it does. So I know that I am ready to start with first marks. Okay, so to recap, we had our drawing board, we taped multiple pieces of paper down as tightly as we can. We tried to tape our bark drawing down squarely to the board. Then we chose a non-negotiable or plum, and using string, we taped that down securely. This should never move, so make sure this is as secure as humanly possible. Then we drew our plumb line on our paper using a ruler, or you can also use a T-square if you trust your supplies. So that is getting set up. That is how we set up our bark drawings. That's how we set up all 4 of our bark drawings, and it's also how you can set up master copies. It's how you can set up working on images at home and from image reference.